What's going on, boys? No guys here. Welcome back to another quick video. We're going to keep this under 8 minutes ideally. Now, what defensive style should you use at this stage of FIFA? What does each one mean, and does it actually make a difference? And before I say that, don't forget of course to follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Neil. Guys, link is down below in the description. I'll be uploading some clips on Twitter coming towards FIFA 22 and some updates and some infographics for those that are wondering. So defensive style. Now there is four. It generally depends on what FIFA you're playing. Generally speaking, balance is probably the best to use for 99% of you guys. I know you may be inclined to use something else, but the truth is you don't know what your opponent's going to do, so you're better off staying on balanced. Balance just basically means that, so ignore the actual description. So the description says a balanced style where your team presses the ball to the middle of the pitch and your team shape is neutral. To make this more simpler, your players don't move out of position. Most players, I would say, around about the gold. I would say mainly, silver 2 to around about gold 2, even gold 1, is they run out with their centre backs. If you have team press, constant pressure, any other pressure on heavy touches, players are going to move out of position. So what you can do is use balance, and then you can press manually. Most players should be using balanced for their most default formations, or their most, let's say for example like a default defensive or a default balance or a default attacking formation. You should be using balanced. Then you have pressure on heavy touch. Now pressure on heavy touch is probably the safest option, but it should only be used for an attacking formation. So let's say for example if you are down, let's say 1-0, let's say in theory, then maybe in your attacking formation you can have for example pressure on every touch. Now what pressure on every touch just basically means is that your team is basically going to be like balanced. They're not going to move out of their position, but if there is a good chance, and the game will deem whether it's a good chance for you to win the ball, the team will then press as shown on the graphic on the screen on the right hand side. But it's only if, as well they say for example, if your opponent takes a heavy touch, or it's a loose ball, or it's a difficult situation. To make this even easier, the game will press for you automatically. You don't know when it is. You're not going to have no indication. It's going to have no buttons showing up. Basically, imagine pressure every touch is balanced, but sometimes the game will just press for you. So if you use this formation, you ideally want to use it when you're attacking. Let's say for example you're down 1 or 2-0, because you don't want to be pressing out of position if you are winning. So many players are using this if you're winning. You might think, oh yeah, let me keep the pressure on. It doesn't work that. This is not like real life football. Most players are going to go to more attacking formation, ultra attacking formation. They're going to commit more players forward. So being pushed out of position is just going to cost you. So pressure on every touch should only be used if you're, let's say, 1-0 down or 2-0 down. You can use pressure on heavy touch. Okay. Then you have press out possession loss. I would not recommend this for anyone watching these videos. I don't care what the pro players use, because they use it because they're good enough. You might see, for example, the common thing is 7 depth, pressure on every touch. These are pro guys that are using this, or top tier elite players, okay? These are not average Joes. And why this is important is you might think this is really good. Your team's going to press all the time. Number one, your stamina is going to get killed. If you've got a gold team like I have, forget it. You're absolutely done. Stamina is going to get rinsed so quickly that you're not going to be able to keep up. So make sure you don't have pressure on every touch on. And especially with a high depth, we'll get on to how depth and width affects all these things as well. But press out of possession loss, the team press all the time when you lose the ball. Now, this is problematic because if your opponent, let's say for example you have the ball, right? And let's say you lose the ball, your opponent gets the ball, and let's say you start pressing, okay? You press all the time for 7 seconds. Any smart, half decent player would see, for example, okay, my player is pressing, and they'll do an L1 trigger or an LB trigger if you're on Xbox, and they'll trigger a winger down the wing. Now, most people don't know how to manually select their left back and right back and track that run, so they get done. Maybe if you have a pressing formation, but you're better off just using team press. Basically, press out possession losses between pressure on heavy touch and constant pressure. But in my opinion, unless you actually know how to use teammate contain, how to run back with your defenders, and unless you're above gold 1, and I'm being serious, unless you're above gold 1, do not even use it, because don't entertain the idea, because a lot of players, they're using this, and what's happening is a typical example. So imagine, let's say for example on the win-loss thing, they win about 5 games in a row and they're thinking, oh, I'm playing amazing, I've won all my games in a row. Once they face someone on the same level or a higher level, they start dipping. And people always go to the same thing, oh, it's scripting, it's DDA. But the truth is, you're just playing players who don't know what they're doing. You're winning 5 games in a row because the players you're playing are not that good. They're not the same caliber as you. Maybe you're conceding defensively, but you're good enough to win offensively. Or maybe let's say they can't finish their goals off. If you put someone on the same level as you with pressure possession loss, you are going to get killed. And this is why loads of people get this thing where, you know, where for example they start very badly in a weekend league and they recover, then they start dipping again, or they start very good and they dip. That dip is caused by people using things that they're used to. They think they're doing the right thing, but they're not. And that's why I was saying, yes, even though you might say to me, hey, look, I'm winning like 5-6 games, I'm on a run. But the truth is that once the run ends, you're in big trouble. And that's when fatigue sets in. That's when frustration sets in. And if you get frustrated and you players moving out of position and you keep pressing, because let's say you're losing 1-0, let's be honest, the game will BS you sometimes. You might get a rebound, unlucky one, you go 1-0 down. If you then get into that situation and you start pushing players out of position, you are going to get done. So in my opinion, I would completely and utterly avoid this. Then you have constant pressure. Now, constant pressure is basically team press. You can turn this on with the D-pad tactics. So if you press down your D-pad tactics, and I think if you press right, so down your D-pad, you bring that menu up on the bottom left, and then here you'll have team press. This means that your team will press. Now, inside the game, there's like a kind of like a countdown timer. So once that timer is expired, you can no longer use it. Constant pressure just basically means unlimited team press. So if you have the team press command on, let's say for example you're using balanced, the benefit is you can press up and then press right on your D-pad, and your team will transform from a balanced defensive style to a team press. That's the benefit of this D-pad tactics. So the D-pad tactics actually override your defensive custom styles. That's why a lot of people, they'll use balanced, or they'll use pressure on heavy touch, and then they'll use team press to aid their press, but this way they can turn it off without pausing the game. If you leave constant pressure on, you're pressing all the time, constantly. You're always running towards the ball. You're always pressing, and it's not worth it because, you know, your stamina is going to get killed. It doesn't matter this team in the season or not. You only should be using team press or constant pressure if you are losing 2-0 and it's do or die. Let's say you really can't get the ball off your opponent, or your opponent is wasting time. Those situations, you should be using it. If you are losing 1-0 but there's still a chance in the game, you don't want to go 2-0 down, so you have a more conservative press. So you start off a balance. You have a bit more of a conservative press when the game presses when you need to. And then you have team press being used alongside this. And then you have do or die constant pressure. That's how it works. So you have the balanced, that's the defensive phase. Then you have pressure on top, which is a bit more attacking. And of course, you can always use team press with pressure on every touch and balanced if you want to like sporadically have like pressing momentum. And you can add that into your game. Let me be careful about the word momentum. Let's just say, for example, pressing as like a light switch turns on and off whenever you want it to, and then you don't use press off possession loss, and then you use constant pressure if you're losing 2-0 70 minutes. You don't want to keep pressing that up and down the D-pad, pressing right. Your timer keeps running out, refilling. Constant pressure is unlimited press. Drop back, don't use it. I'll be honest, your defense, they've nerfed it now, so your defense do nothing. They just stand there. So unless you're a very good player and you basically move players out of position and you actually manually defend, you're going to be in big trouble. Now, there are going to be some rats that are going to promote this playstyle, but obviously you're not going to learn this kind of playstyle on my kind of videos. Of course, I'm never going to make a video like that. You guys know the way I play. I'm never going to promote that kind of football. Don't use it. Even if you do use it now and you park the bus, 22 is going to come out and you're going to be stuck in square one anyway. So in my opinion, just don't use it. This should only be used, I'll be honest, if like, let's say you're like 90, 80 minutes, you're trying to close the game out. But if you want to get better, just use balanced and use low width. Low width means your team is more compact. Higher width means your team is more open. Of course, when you're defending, you should be below 5. If you're, let's say you want to attack in formation, you want to press, you should have a wider width, therefore you cover more of the pitch. So explanatory. 3 depth for defensive formations, attacking formation 7. In between, you go between 5 and 4, and that's how you measure your depth. So take that all as a general rule of thumb, and that is how you should be using your defensive style tactics. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, take it easy, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.